Hey guys, what's going on? Aaron here. Welcome to the video. So there's a couple really important stories I want to talk about today, but first I want to talk about just what's going on with the price. So ultimately, the price is pretty darn boring for Bitcoin. We're still over 100K for Bitcoin, just chilling at 109. We're seeing massive wicks for the day, right? We are seeing big moves of like $6,000 to $8,000 a day. And ultimately, it's just a boring market. Yesterday, we saw a pretty bad day for tech stocks. We can see a lot of them down for the day just based on their earnings. So that definitely affected the crypto market, that the NASDAQ was down for the day. And we're seeing just a lot of wicks up and down. And I've been talking about this for a while. Basically, we're seeing market makers liquidate people, which is what they do. So right now you can see there's a lot more shorts on for leverage. And there's a high likelihood that we will see a wick up to 115K just to wipe out a lot of these people. And one idea of why this is happening the way it is from Raoul Pal on X. Basically, this government shutdown in the US is lessening the liquidity. And we know that Bitcoin and crypto is super sensitive to an increase or a decrease in liquidity. And right now with this government shutdown, we are seeing the ramifications of that. So I want to talk about a couple things. The first is going to be an interview with Brian Armstrong talking about some legislation, then a little bit with what's going on with China, what Scott Bessent said yesterday. And then we got Mike Novogratz saying that he thinks Bitcoin will stay in that 120 to 125K range by the end of the year. But before I touch on those videos, Tucker Carlson is saying why he will not invest in Bitcoin. Let's take a look.
And nobody can explain to me who Satoshi was, the creator of Bitcoin, this mysterious guy who apparently died, but nobody knows who he was. You know, I grew up in DC primarily in a government family, so CIA. That's my guess. Can't prove it, but like, you're telling me to invest in something whose founder is like mysterious and has billions of dollars of unused Bitcoin. Like, what is that? And no one can answer the question, including some of the biggest holders of Bitcoin in the world who I know personally. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. It matters to me.
I think a lot of people share Tucker's sentiment, if I'm honest, because, you know, there is this mysterious lore around who is Satoshi Nakamoto and this anonymous founder that has, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars, I believe, of Bitcoin that haven't moved in many years. A lot of people don't want to invest into that because they're like, what is this, right? Ultimately, though, it shows Tucker's, I guess, naivete around the importance of Bitcoin and what it is. Even if Satoshi popped up and moved those coins, it doesn't change anything, right? I mean, yeah, if this individual or group is still alive, if they decide to sell a ton of Bitcoin, of course, that'll affect the price short term, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. So that's Tucker's take. Let's take a look right here. We've got Brian Armstrong talking about what's going on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, well, we had great meetings with the Democrats in the Senate and on the Republican side today. And the good news is that there's strong bipartisan support and will to get this market structure legislation done. It's important for America, and the 50 million Americans who've used crypto want to see it get done. And so one date we heard floated was, let's try to get this markup done before Thanksgiving. I think that there's 90% of the issues are already aligned on and agreed, and there's draft text going back and forth, a lot of great cross-functional collaboration happening. That last 10% are the remaining issues, and everyone committed to get in the room together and work it out, and hopefully we'll see some draft text or get it out of committee by Thanksgiving.
So he goes on for a couple minutes. Essentially, he thinks there is hope to get a lot of this legislation passed before the end of the year, even though the government is in a shutdown right now. So we'll see what happens, but it's good to know that there are still things that have not been officially passed that will really help crypto once they are passed. So right here, let's hear what Scott Bessent had to say.
I asked him about that report earlier today that the U.S. is considering software curbs for China in retaliation for the Chinese action on trade. The Treasury Secretary said, yes, they are considering those kinds of software curbs. He said everything is on the table. He was also asked about Russia sanctions, and he signaled that something significant may be coming. Here's what the Treasury Secretary had to say just a short time ago.
We are going to either announce after the close this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning a substantial pickup in Russia sanctions.
So Scott is talking about some sanctions for Russia possibly. And of course, everything going on with China is still happening, which is putting a lot of pressure on the markets.
Did he say anything, the Treasury Secretary, about the, on again, off again, maybe yes, maybe no meeting between the President Trump and President Xi?
No, I mean his tone was, all full steam ahead. He didn't specifically say that. I don't think the whole vibe from the Treasury Secretary was this meeting is on. But you did hear the president yesterday raise the prospect, sort of unprompted, that the meeting could not happen between himself and Xi Jinping. He said sometimes people might pull out of a meeting that might say things are too nasty to have a meeting right now. The president said, but this is just business, so it's not too nasty. So it sounded like the president was suggesting that Xi Jinping was the one who might pull out of the meeting before it happens. Tentatively at the end of next week. White House officials will point out to you that no meeting has officially been scheduled between Trump and Xi Jinping, even though the president has been talking about it for some weeks now.
All right. So yeah, we still got that tension between the US and China. So once that clears, which I believe it will, that will be really good for crypto and for the stock market. So that's still looming overhead as well. Finally, I want to talk about this. This is Mike Novogratz. So they bring him on when they just want some opinions on what's going on with the market, especially crypto. It's important to remember that he and a lot of other talking heads were very, very wrong on a lot of things that happened in 2021. For example, it's kind of a joke that Mike Novogratz got a Luna tattoo on his shoulder, and Luna obviously collapsed in 2022. So, take everything with a grain of salt, of course, but let's take a look.
Bitcoin, oddly enough, drop very recently. And I think we're all trying to understand what's going on, how we should be thinking about that in the context of what's happening with gold, in the context of what we think is happening with equities.
Yeah, listen, crypto had a great start to the year, post the sell-off, put in highs, Bitcoin got to 125, and we've had a real consolidation since then. The big deleveraging that happened a week ago, that's not good for markets, right? It wiped out a lot of market makers, means less liquidity. And you can see yesterday we were down and then up 4% and then right back down.
So he's talking about obviously what happened on Friday when Trump announced those 100% tariffs, and we saw those massive, massive wicks in crypto.
So there's a little less liquidity in the market. It took a lot of retail leverage out of the system. And so the good news is we're less leveraged. The bad news is when Humpty Dumpty breaks, he doesn't get put together right away. It takes a few weeks and sometimes months even for markets to heal itself and regain narrative and regain momentum. I don't think anything fundamentally has changed in the crypto story. Our government continues to spend way more money than they should. And I think as long as the debasement of fiat currencies goes on, crypto is going to be seen and Bitcoin is going to be seen. But, we're in a rangy, softer range right now.
So, yeah, I think it's important to remember that whatever's happening today or whatever's happening this month, it doesn't take away the fact that the debasement of the currency is still happening, liquidity is still being pumped in, and they're going to have to essentially debase the currency more and more, right? So what happens in the short term is very a short viewpoint, but you got to zoom out sometimes. And I think days like today and weeks like this week and this month, you got to zoom out.
I don't see what changes that. There's a bill in DC that needs to get passed, hopefully in the next 6 weeks. If that does, I think that'll give crypto a real jolt to the upside. That, and as we get closer, every day we wake up is one day closer to the Fed governor transition. And, my base case is still we get a much more dovish, malleable Fed governor than we've had in the past.
And he mentions this crypto bill that Brian Armstrong was talking about. That will get passed. And then we're going to see a Fed that is a lot more in favor of massively cutting rates like Trump wants.
In terms, though, of the sort of upside downside that you see as a trader in Bitcoin right now, how do you think about it? We've had, obviously, all sorts of folks from Tom Lee and others who've come on and said by the end of the year we could be at $250,000 for this coin. Obviously, others like Kathy Wood have even, more aggressive and optimistic views longer term out. But where are you right this moment?
Yeah, listen, the end of the year is only 2.5 months away. And so there would have to be a heck of a lot of, crazy stuff to really get that kind of momentum. I do think, we should hold 100, 100 or somewhere close to that should be the downside. And on the upside, you don't really accelerate until you take out 125. And so the most likely outlook is we're rangy between, 100 and 120 and 125. Unless we take out the top side. We could take out the top side if, the president prematurely makes a move on the Fed, which, they could target that easily by the end of the year. And if this bill gets passed. Those are the two kind of catalysts I see.
Yeah. So, his viewpoints are pretty in alignment with mine as well. Most likely we hold 100, maybe we drop below it for a week or so. But ultimately, right, we got to break 125K before we can see, obviously, exuberance again. And he mentions again what's going on with the Fed could really, really affect the price of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's still a 50 vol asset. Right. And crypto is like a 60, 70 vol asset class. And so you're to expect big moves in these markets.
And Mike does mention the fact that, right, Bitcoin is super, super volatile. And then crypto's even more volatile once you just include everything in the crypto market, right? So expect massive volatility, which a lot of you guys or everybody watching this understands by now. All right, guys. So that is it for the video today. Just want to make this for you, get it out there. And let me know your thoughts below in the comments, what you think about Brian Armstrong talking about some market structure that needs to get passed. And then we got Tucker Carlson being like, I don't want to invest in Bitcoin because this Satoshi Nakamoto figure is too risky and it may be created by the CIA, that whole kind of narrative, which you've been in crypto, you've heard that a million times. And then we got Mike Novogratz saying, yeah, probably 125K unless we get a new all-time high for the S&P or we get something happening with the Fed that is unexpected or happens sooner than we thought. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hope you guys are doing well. Till next time, talk with you soon, and bye for now.